From the hay capital of the world, Gilbert, Arizona, to the ivy-covered walls of Harvard, to the palm trees of South Beach, and 7 very memorable stops in between, a former 7th-round pick now in his 15th season in the NFL. We are very happy to welcome into this week's Huddle. You may know him as Fitzmagic, Miami Dolphins quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan, so what we do is we appreciate you coming on with us, and what we're going to do is get in the huddle. So what we do is we get in the huddle, we break the huddle so we can go through different segments, and we're going to go through your life a little bit, starting with your youth. So we're going to jump in the huddle right now with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan, so one of the things we always start with is when did you start playing sports, and like what influenced you to start playing sports? Was it an uncle, your parents, your brothers? What was it?
Well, I have 2 older brothers that are a year and a half older than me, identical twins, and it was known from a very early age that we were going to be a sports family. I think my dad felt like that was something that was important. My brothers were very interested, and so I just kind of fell in line in that regard. But it was everything: football, basketball, baseball, soccer. But the unique thing I think that we did when we were younger, my dad liked doing triathlons and races, and so we did Iron Kids when I was growing up. So we would do the little triathlons, the swim, bike, and run, and we're very competitive in those. My brothers were a little bit better than me going to nationals and all that, but I was no slouch. And just growing up in Arizona, swimming was a big thing too, so we did summer swim team every year.
Where would you guys swim?
So we just kind of at the local, there's a million swimming pools out there, but the local team, I think we started off maybe at Gilbert High School, which is where I'm from. But we all swam until we were 12 and then moved on to other things. And my one older brother, the one that stuck with it, ended up being the swim captain at Notre Dame and a pretty good breaststroker, school record holder, all that stuff. So it was cool that he was able to stick with it.
Wow. What was your first team sport that you played?
My first team sport was soccer. I was really big into soccer up until the age of 10. And that's when I made the decision I wanted to play tackle football. And so with those two being at the same time, I kind of ditched soccer, which coming full circle now is very ironic because my wife was a soccer player at Harvard and is really pushing the boys to play soccer. And my boys are 12 and 10 now, and the 12-year-old is kind of done with it. And the 10-year-old is on the fence right now about continuing to play soccer or making the jump to tackle football. So we're at that stage in my life with my kids right now, which is interesting.
That's really interesting, Ryan, that going through that because your wife was an athlete in a different sport, and you're obviously an athlete in football, and we'll find out, I guess, over the next couple of years who wears the pants in the family, I think is what we're trying to figure out, really. But anyway, I want to go back to your childhood a little bit.
Answer.
Right. So when you started playing youth football, did your brothers play with you, or was it just you by yourself?
So both my older brothers played, and one of them broke his hand, I think the second year that he was playing, and decided that it wasn't for him. And, that was fine with my parents, but in not playing tackle football, he had to find another sport to fill it with. So we were always active in that regard. It wasn't for my brother Jason, but my brother Brandon, his twin, played all throughout high school, and he was a quarterback. So, he always wore number 11, and he was 2 years ahead of me in school. So I always wore number 11 and kind of followed behind him. So I think that Brandon playing quarterback shaped me a little bit in terms of my interest in what I wanted to do.
No, that's great. So were your parents did they push you to play, or they just said, whatever you guys want to do, we just want you to play sports and be happy doing it?
Yeah, I don't think they pushed us and encouraged us to play sports, and I don't think they cared what we did. We whether it was golf, tennis, we did some of that stuff in the summer to keep busy. no matter what it was, they just wanted us busy and active. And certainly at that time, there wasn't even a question of, okay, well, you're going to focus on this sport and play it year round. We just did everything as the seasons came up and just did all of the rec leagues. You know, there was no real travel or pressure to play on any of the travel teams or anything. And essentially it was just staying active. And, you know, we loved it. I loved every time football season would come around. And then I loved every time we get into basketball season and baseball and swimming. And it was a fun little cycle that we had going on, but they encouraged us to definitely play team sports. And, you know, it's just something we always kind of found something to keep us busy.
So if, like, you got hurt, right? So when I got hurt when I was in 8th grade, I know I hurt my foot really bad. I went home and I said, Dad, I don't know if I could play football. I hurt my foot really bad. He said, well, I just bought you those brand new cleats, and I'll be damned if you're not playing football. So tie your shoe tighter and get back out there. And then I find out at the end of the season that I did have a broken foot, but that was my dad, right? Were your parents like that, or just like if you got hurt, did they push you to fight through it?
Well, I think the example of, you know, if we were ever committed to something, they would make sure that we finished it. And, you know, I think one example would be my older brother decided he wanted to wrestle freshman year of high school and realized right away it was a big mistake and didn't want to wrestle. But, you know, my dad especially, there was no quit. Once you decided you were doing something, you're going to stick it out for the whole time. So there was encouragement in that regard. You know, maybe not a gentle nudge, but a two-handed shove to stay out there. But that's just how it was in my house. And once we committed something, we did it. You know, I don't remember having too many injuries growing up. But the other cool thing, I think, just as we're talking about this and I'm thinking about it, is my dad was there for everything. You know, and having 4 boys, the commitment that he had to making sure that he was working a job that he was going to be able to go to every football practice and every baseball practice. And he wasn't necessarily the head coach or the manager, but he was there watching, and he was very involved in what we were doing. And, you know, the car rides home, whether it was from practice or games, after a good practice or game, you kind of enjoyed it. After a bad one, you knew you were in for a couple laps around the neighborhood and a stern talking to. And that's a funny thing now with my boys is I'm the exact same way. You know, they sometimes don't want to get in the car with Dad after a game, depending on how it went. But I felt like that was a key part of my childhood and what's made me who I am today, especially with competitiveness in sports, and something I really enjoyed that my dad did with me. Let me go a quick sidebar on my mom real fast, the story I was just remembering. So a swim team in the summertime, sometimes it was, you know, waking up at 5:30 and going to the pool and swimming for 2 hours. And I think I was 8 or 9 at the time, and I tried to pull a fast one on my mom because I didn't want to swim, and you know, my brothers were there, and I forgot my suit, which I didn't really forget my suit. I just didn't put it on. I had some sweatpants on, and she looked at me and she said, "Well, hopefully you remember it next time." And I swam the whole practice with sweatpants on.
Yeah, you got faster though.
It was a pretty big mistake, but.
Ryan, besides your father as an influence, was there a coach that stuck out that you remember as being a real motivator for you to, you know, continue to be good and continue to play on?
You know, I think I had a lot of good coaches growing up. That was something that I just think in terms of my dad's presence and being there, he always made sure that, and a lot of them were friends of his, that they were guys that were there for the right reasons and really there to teach the kids and trying to enjoy the whatever season it was. But my high school football coach, Mike Reardon, he was the guy that I really appreciated.
We want to go on to your high school years, you know, being the big man on campus in Gilbert, Arizona. What was it like growing up in Gilbert, Arizona?
You know, Gilbert has changed a ton in the last 20 years, just in terms of even just the population and the growth and how many people are there. But it wasn't necessarily a small farm town when I grew up there, but as I like to explain it, behind our house there was the cornfield, and you know, every other Saturday the crop duster would come right behind our house and
That's probably why you have that nice
go
beard
out there
now.
and watch it drop chemicals on the plant. So it wasn't an enormous place, but it's a great place to raise a family. We have a home there now, and eventually end up living there again. But high school was a lot of fun for me. A lot of great friendships, and I was a football player, basketball player, and did track as well. So just kind of kept busy, with sports and academics throughout the year, and fit some fun in there too.
I made one trip to Gilbert in high school coming up from Tucson. We were following our basketball team going to the state playoffs, and I've never remembered being homered any worse than the refs from Gilbert to the boys from South Point Catholic down in Tucson. I've never seen anything like it in any sports I've ever watched since, but that's just a side note. But it's still a little bitter, as you might tell.
There's not a lot of people that live in the valley that like the people from Tucson that are coming up, Well, so I probably don't.
Especially the referees.
Well, the feelings are mutual, Ryan. So.
Yeah, I know. That goes both ways for sure.
So, Fitz, what'd you run in track? What'd you do in track? Were you a javelin guy?
So they didn't have the javelin. I was interested in it. I just did it really to stay in shape. And so I remember one of my math teachers, Mr. Schultz, I believe his name was so excited to get me out there. He's got an athlete out there, the quarterback of the football team. So he throws me in the triple jump. And immediately he realized that was a bit of a mistake, and I wasn't the athlete he made me out to be. So I switched to the 400 meters, and really it was just to stay in shape. So I ran my first meet, I think 2 weeks after we started training, and I'd heard the 400 was a tough race, but didn't think much of it. Was beating everybody in the first 200 and feeling really good about myself. And then the proverbial, the monkey jumped on my back, or elephant, or whatever it was. And I came to a screeching halt and essentially got beat by 10 seconds by almost everybody in the field. So I learned a good lesson there, and it really was just to stay in shape. I'm not any sort of track athlete, but it was just to have a fun time with my buddies and to be out there doing something.
And I remember yelling at you a couple times when we'd have to run sprints at the Rams about slowing down. So I don't want to hear about these fast starts and the monkey jump on your back, because I think that carried through your whole career where you start really fast.
You know what, though, Gus? I'm feeling it now. I'm at the point that you were when I was a rookie, and now the rookies are running by me. So I know exactly why you used to get mad at me now.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't really mad at you. I just had to have somebody to gripe about. So, because I was mad at myself for still having to run at 36 years old.
Exactly.
So Fitz, what year were you when you started getting notices, understand that colleges were interested in you and you really wanted to go to college to play football?
So junior year of high school was the first season that I had started on varsity, and I got a little bit of interest after my junior year, started getting some letters. My dad was very proactive in terms of, we took some trips. We took a trip to the East Coast just to kind of check out schools and get a feel for, I'd never been that way. So just to get a feel for that side of the country, and, the just different schools other than Arizona State and U of A and NAU, because those were the three that everybody kind of did coming out of Arizona. And so I was, continuing to get letters, but when it came senior year to people actually putting an offer on the table, didn't get any. Had a couple maybes, but Eastern Washington out of the Big Sky was the only school that offered me a scholarship. 1AA school, which I guess is FCS now, but that was it. And so I still had held out hope that maybe I could be a recruited walk-on and go to a school, a bigger school, whether it be Arizona State or a Notre Dame, Stanford, Cal. I started looking at academic schools at that point. And then, I had some letters from these Ivy League schools, and truth be told, I had no idea, especially in my junior year, that Ivy League schools played football. And so once I knew that no scholarship offers were coming my way besides Eastern Washington, which I went out there on a visit just to see it because they were the one school that offered me. I took some visits to some Ivy League schools, Harvard, Princeton. We did some unofficials where my dad took me out there, and I just decided that I was going to try to go to the best possible academic school that I could go to, and that's why Harvard went to the top of the list. And that was a big reason why I chose to go there. I remember on my recruiting trip out there, the Charles River was frozen over in January, and people were walking on it. And me being a kid from Gilbert, Arizona, I didn't even know that rivers could freeze over. So that was a new experience for me. But I knew that if I was, I enjoyed it in January when the weather was probably the worst. I would probably have a good time there. But in hindsight, thank goodness Arizona State didn't offer me, because I would have been there in a heartbeat, and my life would be significantly different now than if I would have gone down that path. You know what the funny thing was? Dirk Cutter, I think it was his first year as a coach when I was a senior in high school, and so Dirk didn't recruit me at all. And then 2016, 2017 rolls around. I get a phone call with Dirk as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, interested in bringing me on as a quarterback for their team. So I told him he was 15 years too late, but decided to go with him anyway. And I have a good friendship with Dirk now.
Well, that's how the Fitzmagic happened. Dirk brought the Fitzmagic. I just think if Fitzmagic could have happened so many years ago, if he would have just brought you into Arizona State.
And
so
go Devils. Fork 'em Devils.
Hager's shaking his head over here. He likes to bear down a little bit, Fitzy.
Oh man.
Yep. Who was that person in your household that pushed you to be great in academics?
Well, I think again the same with sports. Both my parents were they encouraged us. I think my brothers a little bit. I fed off of them in terms of their success, and there was always just an expectation in the household that you're going to come home with straight A's. And if you didn't, there was a problem. And so I just think there was a good example set for me. And, it was just, school for a while came very easy to me. So like that was part of it as well. But I think the work ethic that was instilled in us, and really just the expectation as well that B's were not good enough from a young age, set me on the right path.
Ryan, now you've transitioned into Harvard. You left the sunny, warm, just feeling of Arizona. Now you're in cold Boston. And what was your first time on Harvard's campus like that fall?
Well, I went out, I think 2 weeks early maybe for camp for football before school had started, and it was a rude awakening because, Boston gets cold in the wintertime, but it can get pretty toasty, pretty humid in the summertime, and none of the buildings had air conditioning. So that one, to me, coming from Arizona and thinking that you could actually build a dormitory or, any sort of place, permanent establishment without air conditioning was a big shocker to me. So I sweated it out a little bit for the first few months, but once school got going, boy, I'll tell you, it's a rude awakening to get in. You start your football stuff, you feel like a fish out of water, you're trying to meet new people, and then to get all the academic stuff thrown on you with your classes and the competitiveness. It's a tough, that first semester is such a tough semester to get acclimated and try to figure things out. But, I think, again, alluding to Coach Murphy and the job that he does and the way that he helps guys out and tries to set you up for success, learned some time management skills right away that helped me throughout. And I would also say before school started, when we were out there for camp, I got the first glimpse of my now wife, Liza Barber at the time. And it took me a full 2.5 years to say anything to her, but she certainly caught my eye that day.
Wow. That early. I didn't know that.
Yeah, right away. It was like, the soccer team and the football team kind of ate our meals at the same place in Dunster Hall. And,
So you
was-
guys
it was
started
that
on
early.
opposite ends of the hall eating, and then like every couple weeks you'd move a little closer. And it took about 2 years to actually sit beside her.
Yeah, that I'd yell her name and hide behind a tree and throw snowballs at her, and then 2.5 years later, just really swept her off her feet. Quite the romantic.
She had no choice. She had no choice. That's awesome. So your parents followed you a lot, like you were talking about how in high school they went to everything. They were really involved with you and your brother's lives. So then you're going. How far is Harvard from Gilbert? It's like 3,000 miles.
It's a long, long flight. Yeah, the direct flight. I think the direct flight going from Phoenix to the East Coast is probably 5 hours or so, and then maybe 6 on the way back.
So how often did your parents get to come see you your first year?
So I have a younger brother that basically mirrored me. So when I was a freshman in college, he was a freshman in high school, 4 years younger, and so he would play on Friday nights. And then my games would obviously be Saturday afternoons. And so my mom had to stay home a lot of the time with my brother. Sometimes she would come and watch my games, but my dad never missed one. So my dad would go watch Sean, my younger brother, on Friday night, hop on a red eye, and then he'd land. One of my roommates would let him into our dorm. He'd try to sleep for an hour, maybe shower up a little bit, and then head to the field and watch my game, and then fly home on Sunday. So that was really special to me, for him to, especially as you get older, I think you start to really appreciate some of that stuff. But he made it a point to not miss any of my games, and whether it was a home or an away game, he made sure that he was there. And my mom made the most that she could with another youngster at home. But
so the other guys I want to know about are your roommates. Who were your roommates, and who were the guys that helped you get through college?
Man, they probably hindered me more than they helped me in terms of the amount of Halo that we played and the parties and things we went to. But I'll say a couple things about them. Most of them were football players with me, and a few of them were football players by our senior year. A couple of them were not, but I had 7 roommates, and just from all over the country, from different backgrounds, but we all had similar passions in that, we loved sports. It didn't necessarily have to be football. A lot of them, were baseball guys or, basketball guys or whatever, but we all kind of had that competitiveness in us, and which made for a lot of late night Halo games. And the other thing I'll say, though, is I'm so glad that social media didn't really exist, when I was in college, and the camera phones and everything, it's just started coming out, but we're very pixelated with the pictures because, we had a lot of fun, and luckily none of it was really documented, and a lot of it can just kind of live in memory of the things that we did. But a lot of great guys and guys that I still keep up with to this day. And, they're all, it's pretty neat now to see them having a lot of success in their careers as we're coming up on about 15 years out of school. And everybody building families and doing that. So guys that I still keep up with to this day and will for the rest of my life.
So then, you guys all play together. You're enjoying your time at Harvard. You were just one of the greatest athletes ever to come out of Harvard, and just had some incredible experiences. You've set records there, and I'm assuming most of them still stand. I don't know if there's any quarterbacks rush for more yards than you at Harvard.
Some of them do, some of them don't. I think the game's changing a little bit, but the thing that I'm very proud about when I was there in my senior year, me and the guys that I was talking about and all the guys that came into my class, that senior class, we went 10-0 and won the Ivy League title. And that's something that was a great memory because, the different thing about Harvard from a lot of these other colleges, especially the bigger schools, is, I am the exception. There aren't very many guys that go on to play in the NFL. And so that last game versus Yale your senior year is so meaningful because it's the last game you're probably ever going to play, in terms of competitive tackle football in a game that means something. And so that was such a big one for us to be able to send everybody off with such a positive memory. because it is. I've been very fortunate to do what I do, but for all of them, I mean, it was their last game.
Right, and I understand how that feels. And what's funny, Ryan, is I've played with 3 Harvard athletes: you, Matt Burke, and Isaiah Kazavinsky. So I'm sure there were a few other ones, but
it's a football factory now, Gus. I know there's more dudes from Harvard in the league than Tulsa. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I heard Coach Murphy's building a big bubble now, and like you guys are actually getting air conditioning in the dorms, all those types of things. So, Ryan, you go through, you have this great career in Harvard, and you finish your career against Yale, and like you said, you win the Ivy League. When did you realize like the NFL was actually gonna happen for you?
Oh, this was a funny story because I had my junior season was the first season that I was the outright bona fide starter. There was a guy, Neil Rose, my first 2 years there, that was a great player, and we had kind of split time a little bit his last few years. So junior year for me, first year I've ever been the true 10-game starter or whatever, and had a fine year. I think we went 7-3. Professional football was not on my radar at all. I mean, not at all. I was starting to go to some of the, different things that they had on campus for recruiting and looking at, well, if I go to New York, which banks can I work for, and San Francisco and Chicago, and starting to do some of that stuff and think about it. And then I started getting calls from agents. And when they started calling me, I'm thinking, what, do they have the right number? Like, what are they watching here? And truthfully, like, that was the first time that I ever thought about it. Agents started calling me, and they said I'm showing up on some of these lists and showing up on everybody's radar as at least a potential prospect. And so at that point, I deflected all those calls to my dad. He narrowed it down to a couple agents that at the end of my senior year we would meet with, and I made it my goal at that point to say, hey, let me throw everything I can into this and see if I can at least get a shot at playing in the NFL. So I went out and had, a decent senior season and tried to do some all-star games. Did the East-West Shrine game, did the Hula Bowl, was able to attend the Combine, and and then that would have concluded my college career. So I won't talk about anything else until we get to the pro career.
Dave, got any other questions for Ryan?
Well, I was just going to say we're going to break this huddle, but when we come back, we're going to hear about Gus welcoming you to the Rams and how that all went.
I came in and kind of had some fun with
Ryan. How did Gus treat you? He was the old savvy vet. He's been in the league some time at that point. Was there any hazing, or how did he treat the young guy who was potentially going to take his position?
I will tell you what, I went through my first year and didn't really receive any sort of hazing or, I had a few rookie duties, but nothing crazy. They made fun of me that I went to Harvard and called me, all that stuff you'd expect. So I skated through rookie year thinking, man, people tell these horror stories and talk about, getting bullied and picked on, and it was nothing. What a cakewalk. Well, I was a little bit wrong, because then my second year starts up and we've got a new coach, Scott Linehan, who decides to bring in one of his guys that he's worked with, Gus Frerotte. So Gus comes in, immediately takes my jersey number without telling me and switches my jersey. I think I went from 11 to 12 or 12 to 11. It wasn't real meaningful, but he set the tone early with that one. And then I'll tell you what, we'll get into some of these stories, but, Gus and I became really close, and it was always all these stories. I think at least, he convinced me that they were out of love for me, but for all the things that he did to me, he really, we would have dinner over at their house all the time and hang out, and he was a huge influence on me, especially early on in my career.
Can you tell us a story about your wedding rings? Because to me, that is so important, and I think you knew that from the first time you ever saw her, but you didn't know that that's the way it was going to go. But tell us a little bit about that background.
What are you talking about? The actual proposal, or are you just talking about wearing the wedding ring when I play? What are we
Yeah.
talking
So
about?
that story is amazing. I mean, I don't really want to tell people how you proposed to her in a McDonald's. I mean, we don't really want to talk there.
Yeah.
I want you to tell them
Okay.
why
Good.
you
Yeah.
leave your wedding ring on all the time.
Well, I just it was actually when I was in Cincinnati, I accidentally left it on for a practice, and it didn't bother me. And so then I started really thinking about it, and thinking about what it would mean to me. Why I would take it off, what it would mean to me, and what it would mean to her to leave it on. And so I think it was at some point in 2007. We've been married in 2006. When I just made the decision, like this wedding ring is never going to come off my hand, and it has nothing to do with throwing it in anybody else's face. It's just a personal decision for me, and something that I feel like is important for me to show Liza that it is forever, and it's always on my mind, and that I do love her each and every day, and that's a lot of the reason why I don't take it off.
But it seems like every place you've gone, you guys have a kid to match, right? So now it's 17. You're 17. This is your eighth. Now, is there going to be another child after this? Is there going to be an eighth child? I know you just had Jake, right?
Yeah, so Jake's 3 months old now. We've had 7 kids in 7 different states, and so I think the saving grace here for not having another one is I'm moving in state from Tampa to Miami. So we'll see. We'll see if it matches the states or if it matches the teams. But I think right now we're thinking that it's going to match the states and stay at 7. But we'll see. We still got some time to decide.
Yeah. You've made so many transitions in your job, in your line of work, from youth to high school to college to the pros and to 8 teams now. Just give our audience a bit of how you can do that all the time and over and over and over again.
Well, I think there's a lot of parts of that question. The first thing I would say, and just about family and having to constantly make that transition, is we've always made it a point to stay together. Whenever I've made a move, and this is something that you did as well. Especially in the early parts of your career, and again for me in the early parts of my career, every time we moved, we stayed together and we moved together, and you really try to become a piece of the community that you're living in. And even if it might be putting roots in the ground for 1 year or for 2 years, or my longest stop was 4 years, you try to become invested and involved as much as you can in that particular community, and that's what we've done. And we have so many great friends now that we have made from the places we've lived in, and we also look at every move as an adventure, and so as long as we're keeping a positive outlook and shaping these things in the right way, our kids have always followed along. I mean, my wife Liza is one of the most positive people you'll ever meet, and so our positivity, and especially through her and the way that she is on a daily basis, has really trickled down to our kids, and looking at each move as an adventure. To attack that at another angle, transition for me, and having to move just, career-wise, and being in different spots and different roles, backup, starter, fighting for jobs. I've always had to have the utmost confidence in myself, and, I've believed in myself every step of the way. And if I didn't, then none of this would have been possible, and none of it would have worked. And it gets hard at times, especially as a quarterback in the NFL. But this is for you, any job that you have, you get beaten down a little bit. Mine might be in a little bit more of a public setting, but ultimately there's certain, core values and beliefs that you have to rely on, and you really learn a lot about yourself. And so, I've been through a ton of adversity in my career, but for me, I've never lost belief in myself. I know my family has never lost belief in me, and I've, always decided to make sure that I focus on the things that are positive, and to make sure that I focus on the things that are important. And so nothing's more important to me than my family, And we've had a great ride, but I also continue to love playing this game. I love the adversity, and every other year getting on a new team and trying to figure it out with a new set of guys. I mean, I'm really excited for my opportunity this year, and now I feel really old in the locker room, but with age, I guess there should come some wisdom. So hopefully I can impart some wisdom on these guys, and we'll be able to handle the adversity. But just the last thing here, the biggest thing for me, I think, as a player, and you always want to be respected by the guys that you play with and against, but certainly the guys you play with, because they see you on a daily basis, is I try to be the same person every single day, whether we're on a 10-game win streak or a 10-game losing streak. Try to attack the day the same way, prepare the same way, treat people the same way, and that's gone a long way for me in my career.
One last thing on your career. You've been in the NFL for what, 15 years now?
Yep, same as you, Gus, 15.
You're getting ready to beat me, though. You're going to be 2 years in Miami. So, but what was your favorite of all the times you've had in the NFL? What is your favorite on-field playing experience so far?
Oh,
maybe rookie of the week.
Man, this is a tough question. There's a lot of them, Gus. I think when you say that, the things that pop into my head, my first ever game, where I was a snot-nosed fourth stringer to start the year, and then I think it was in November, get thrown into a game down 21, and we end up coming back and winning in overtime. I had no idea what I was doing. I think about when I was in Buffalo and we had a hot start to the season, and home game against the Patriots where we beat them. Just the feeling in that stadium at that point was something that'll never, ever, ever leave me. I had some great memories in New York, and some of the games that we had down the stretch there, just with that group of guys. That was a really special group of guys. And then the start in Tampa last year was so much fun. So there's a million memories that I have, but those are a few that pop into my head right away.
All right, great. Dave, anything else on Ryan's pro career?
Well, I think when we get back on our No Huddle segment, we're going to ask Ryan for his best Gus story and vice versa.
Well, yeah, Ryan. So what we do is the No Huddle. We usually ask questions, like stupid questions, like, what is your favorite food? And for you, it'd be everything. You're just like me, so it doesn't really matter. So anyway, we're going to break the huddle, come right back with Ryan Fitzpatrick. All right, Ryan, this is our No Huddle segment. What we do usually is ask some crazy questions, but instead of that, I think that what we should do, since you and I know each other so well, is why don't you go first, share your favorite Gus Frerotte story, and then I'm going to share maybe a few of my favorite Ryan Fitzpatrick stories.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave the best one for you because I know which one you're gonna talk about, and it was an absolute classic. But there was one I was telling the other day. I mean, it was little stuff on a day-to-day basis, but Gus, and I didn't realize it at the time, but in preseason, I'm a size 36 waist, and get ready for your preseason football games. My whole future and career is on the line. Each and every one of these games I'm battling out. I think it was with Dave Vergone at that time for the third string spot on the Rams. Gus was certainly the backup and Bolger was the starter. So there were 3 jobs, and I was battling for that last one. So it's a serious time for me. Preseason game 1, feel good. Game 2, my pants start feeling a little bit tighter, but I don't think anything of it. Third game, I didn't really play in the game. It was starting to feel a little bit tighter, but again, not thinking anything of it. But I learned later on that Gus every week would take my pant size down 2 sizes. And so I went from a 36 to a 34 to a 32 to that last game being in something close to a 30, and being a young guy and a rookie, not really saying anything, but gosh, feeling like either I was gaining a bunch of weight or that my pants were getting snug. So playing with my life on the line, Gus toying around with me. And then the other thing I know, 2 things he used to do as well. One is he would, we had the radios in our helmets, and he would take the radio while I was on scout team during practice and just start talking to me and saying weird things as I was up the line of scrimmage trying to call cadence. That was funny. And then another thing I remember him doing, again, going out there playing for my life, ready to either win or lose the job, and asking me if I was ready to go. Yeah, I'm ready to go. He's got a water bottle in his hand, thinking, man, this is a nice guy, going to give me some water. And then he squirts it all over my crotch. So I run out to the huddle looking like I had pee in my pants. But he was able to help me keep things in perspective and keep it loose. So those are a few of my favorites.
Well, I'll tell you, Ryan, through all that stuff, right? There was a guy that was in the background, and he was fist pumping every day, right? And I still call him fist pump, right? So Ryan's dad, he would come to our 2-day practices. He'd be standing there in the end zone, and we'd be in practice, and Ryan would throw a touchdown to receiver, and you just see his dad just in the background fist pumping up in the air, throwing it up, and Bulger and I caught wind of it, and it just happened. But that goes back to everything Ryan talked about how his parents were there for him through thick and thin, supported him through everything, and they still do that to this day. And your values came from them, and it's just an amazing story. My Ryan Fitzpatrick story is probably my favorite one. I still try to share with most of the teams you go to. I don't know if I sent it to anybody in Tampa Bay, but I did send it to Nick Mangold, your center, when you were with the Jets. So Ryan obviously went to Harvard. We heard that story. And so Ryan, I was doing an interview. I don't know if you were doing it or I was doing it, but I expressed that, how Ryan got into Harvard, and people want to say, well, he was recruited there. I said, well, no, that's not really what happened. What really happened was Ryan was in the band in high school. He was a really good trumpet player, and he got recruited by Harvard to be in the Harvard band. And so when Harvard saw him, what kind of athlete he was, he made the football team. And that's kind of my story. So one Christmas.
Which is not true.
It's not true. It's not true at all. Like, we know that's not true. But I was just having a lot of fun with it. And Ryan was a great sport. And Ryan, if you weren't such a good sport about all this, I probably would have quit in the first one. But you really enjoyed it for some reason. I don't know why. And Bulger really enjoyed it too, I think. Right? So
he did. I think
so
he did, yeah.
I get our photographer to take a picture of Ryan in his Harvard uniform, right? And he's throwing a football from one hand to the next like this, and his hands are up in the air. And our photographer for the Rams takes that picture. Now today I probably could edit it myself, but I had no idea what I was doing back then. And he put a trumpet in one hand and a bouquet of flowers in the other hand. And it said, "Merry Christmas" from the Harvard band on it. And so we made this picture. Mark Bulger and I went into the room where all the copy machines were, and we literally made copies for everyone in the building. And Ryan, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I've been hit in the head as many times as you, but
no,
so,
I had no idea this was going on, and everybody's festive and in the holiday spirit. So I'm walking around. One's Rams Park.
Well, we were going up to meetings, right? To quarterback meetings.
Yeah, we're going up to meetings, and people are, from secretaries to people in the corporate part to ticket sales, they're all coming up to me and saying, "Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas." And I'm feeling great about myself. Boy, I must just exude, the Christmas spirit.
I think you said,
happiness.
maybe Liza sent out Christmas cards to everybody.
Yeah, I'm thinking, boy, Liza was really on top of her stuff, and then we get to the meeting, and Gus and Mark are giggling like two schoolgirls, and you could finish it off, Gus.
Well, I think the kicker was when we were walking down the hall, and the one, I don't know where she was. She was a secretary for something. She came up and she said, "Ryan, will you sign my Christmas card?" And she handed it to you, and you looked at it, and then you immediately turned around, and Bulger and I were just laughing our heads off. And there's the picture of you. It's an 8x10. Merry Christmas from the Harvard band. I think you signed it for her, but that's when you really realized what we did. And actually, we put one in Georgia Frontier's office too, and I think she got one as well.
Yeah, I'm sure she loved it.
That's my Ryan Fitzpatrick. There's several others I could tell, but I'm not going to share those. But that one was a lot of fun, and Ryan is just such a good guy, great family guy. great son, great father, everything that you want to be. And I hope that you guys, take some of his stories and take them to heart and can really listen to him and put him into your life somehow, because he is an unbelievable person. Just from his beginnings in Gilbert to getting to Harvard and doing what he's done in the NFL and all those transitions. And Ryan, we appreciate you coming on. So, and do you mind if I may share that picture for my No Huddle segment?
Throw it out. Yeah, if you still have it, Gus, throw it out there,
Ryan,
man.
it's on my phone. It's your screensaver, of course. So I can't tell you how much it means for you to come on our show, and so we really appreciate you spending the time with us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was fun catching up with you guys.
Well, I look forward to you going 16-0 in Miami this year and watching the run. I'll be down to watch several games, so enjoy it. Dave, got any last words for Ryan?
Just worst of luck to the Sun Devils, but it was great talking to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you guys, too.
All right. See you, Ryan.
All right, see you.